The President Tinubu's poverty reduction plan is our focus, and let's find out how far it's gone, with many Nigerians suffering multidimensional poverty in spite of the government's numerous interventions. I am singularly delighted and honored to have Nigeria's Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abubakar Kyari. He joins us now on Arise Prime Time. Glad to have you join us, Minister.
Thank you very much, India, and good evening, viewers.
All right. The President says food security is not negotiable, but 180 days after that remark or pledge on, bringing down high food prices, Nigerians are still grappling with, high food prices. I mean, that occurred between July 10 and January 7. So why?
Well, let me just put in
perspective.
When you look at prices, food prices across the nation, you have varying food prices. In some places they're low, some places they're a bit higher. And when you look at generally, around the neighborhood, when I mean around the neighborhood, I mean even around the countries around us, prices are extremely even higher than those that are in Nigeria. So it's a global thing that we're experiencing. It's all over. Prices of food have risen, right from the impacts of COVID and the impacts of climate change, the Ukrainian war, and so on and so forth. So I appreciate the concerns of many Nigerians, especially the affordability, index on food, and what government is trying to do here is actually to ramp up production. Now, when availability is there, but then prices are still high, it's a case of supply and demand. You ramp up supply, and demand stays the same, and then the prices come down. So I think that is the direction that we're looking at.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we have a case of a system that has been, has not been taken care of over a period of time. Some are accidental, some are by nature, COVID, flooding, climate change. And climate change is here to stay, really, when you look at it. So what we need to do now is to adapt to that, see what we can do. And it's very difficult to change a traditional habit, especially 95% of our farmers are small, rural, smallholder farmers that have inherited a practice, a tradition over a period of time, from ancestry, teachings to what is being done now. So it's sometimes difficult to, have that person change his way because of some phenomenon that just has happened. And, they couldn't just understand why last year it didn't flood and why is it flooding today. So, these are kind of, the things that we're looking at, irregular pattern of rainfall and things like that.
All right. Somebody listening out there, a Nigerian listening out there, may not quite agree with you, Minister, or the fact, there may be increase in items all over the world, but this seems to have been compounded by the reason of the two policies of the government: fuel subsidy removal and flotation of the naira.
When you look at the flotation of the naira, like I said, a 3,000 naira plate in Nigeria is 5,000 naira in Niger. So, that also, but that is not to say that we should not take care of our domestic issues. And like I said, when you look at issues like land, for instance, Nigeria is rapidly growing. Nigeria grew by 5.6 million in 2023. I don't know what the records are in maybe 2024, but I assume it's going to be a bit higher than 5.6 million. How many countries have 5.6 million population? Nigeria grew by that. So it's a humongous leap. By 2050, we'll be, I think, 400 million. And 2050 is 25 years away. Just think 25 years ago seemed like yesterday, right? 25 years from now is tomorrow. We should have started day before yesterday, but we did not. It is only now that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has started putting reforms in terms of mechanization, in terms of seed production, in terms of research in good seeds, high variety yielding seeds. So, and then it's not only seeds. Look at what we have in terms of land. Land is shrinking when you look at it. It's not that but in terms of arable land, we're having less and less due to flooding, due to habitation because of population growth. And when you look at some of the crops, some of the cereals that we have a deficit. I'll give you a case in point like maize. We're only producing 50% of our demand. Now, what if we get a high yielding seed, for instance, and good agronomy practice, and good soil health, like in terms of fertilization, and just double the yield, you will cover that demand that you're looking for. But we're doing much more than that. We're trying to see how we can do all year round farming, for instance, get good seeds. That's the mechanization aspect we're talking about.
Yeah, I'll still come to mechanization.
Okay.
But what you said earlier will point to the fact, except that you added that maybe now, about the population increase, it will point to the fact that Nigeria doesn't seem to be planning ahead. Because if your population is growing, you should be able to extrapolate and plan ahead. So unless you're saying that...
It's not for me to do the population economics. I'm only here to make sure that we keep up with the food demand of the country at an affordable price. So food security is availability, accessibility, and affordability of nutritious food.
Yeah. All right. What happened to the 150-day duty-free import window for food commodities?
Yeah, the window was opened, I think, sometime in July.
Yeah,
and was to end in December.
January 7th. Was it? Is it January 7th?
No, December 31st, I think, if I'm not mistaken. It was to end till the end of the year, the first fiscal, the calendar year. And and it was open. Some of the requests started coming in, and like I've said before, especially in rice. Maize, we have seen some imports. Wheat, there's some imports. In any case, wheat has always been an import, we're a net importer of wheat. But in terms of rice, for instance, which is the most common crop and food that we have, the Nigerians eat, we notice that by the time they come into the country, it would have an impact of the wet season harvest in October, November period last year. And that would have, had a detrimental effect on the harvest that is going on. And, next year, probably you won't find farmers going out there to produce. And you cannot really depend on import food at all. This was a window that would have impacted, in terms of lowering the price. But that is not to say that the prices have not come down. They have, but not by much that we want. So the window will be looked into. It will maybe be revised, either suspended or revised. But we're looking closely at what our dry season harvest would look like. And that is also another issue that we're talking about. We're now accelerating and ramping up production in dry season farming.
All right, I'm sure you're aware of what the AFD president, Kiwumi Adesina, said. He said, Nigeria can't import its way out of the food crisis. He actually says this could destroy the country's agriculture.
Well, everyone has his own opinion. But I would also say, go back when Adesina was minister. Were there imports? Yes, there were. Who did it? Him. He authorized importation of food. So, and this was how many years ago? So what had changed?
That's the point.
Yeah, what had changed? So I don't know why he's talking. And there is no country in this world, really, only a few that have food sovereignty. Only a few in this world. So you can export some and import some. That's what the game is sometimes, But let us not miss the fact. Let us not run away from the issue at hand. What the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, intends to do and what he wants for Nigeria and what everybody in this field wants is lower prices, affordability of nutritious food. And I think this is what we all need to do. All of us need to coalesce and work together and see how best we can. Production, there is production, yes, with some deficit, but you would agree with me there is availability. But also the affordability is what is of great concern. The food inflation is of what is great concern to Mr. President and to everybody in this field. I have sleepless nights trying to say, okay, what can we do? But mind you, where food is produced is not necessarily where it's processed, and it's not necessarily where it is consumed. So what you have in between, there are linkages of logistics linkages that also have an impact on the prices. Production is going, but processing is also impacted by other things as well. Transportation is also impacted by others. So what we are saying here is my mandate is to make sure that we have produced, and this is exactly, you said you were coming back to mechanization, but I just want to jump into it.
Okay,
and,
okay. While you're jumping into it, let me just take it up. I'm going to come back to additional, and I'm going to come to transportation, which you talked about, which is very important. Any plans for more mechanized farming and subsidizing the equipments? Because one of the talks is that the equipments are expensive.
Well, it's more of what are we doing so that the smallholder farmer has access to the mechanization? I think it's not about subsidizing this or subsidizing that, but how does he get access to those? And then, we're looking at different forms we're moving away from what we used to do before. The average land size farmland is 60% of a hectare, which is 6,000 square meters. And that's the average of the smallholder farmer. So these are small holder. But what we need to do is maybe cluster them, make them into bigger contiguous farmland so that it will be more economical for you to use mechanization in terms of doing the tractors, plowing, harrowing, harvesting, and things like that. And it can be done. It's been practiced. I mean, even now, some of our wheat programs that we are doing, we clustered them into, sizable farmlands. But however, we just clustered them in terms of provision of inputs. So one advantage the mechanization has, I have been to a farm in November, in Jigawa, for instance, where they do multiple cropping between wheat and rice, use the same farmland because of the floodplain, the irrigation facilities. And there was still wet season rice that was not harvested and wouldn't be harvested before the window of the wheat would expire, because wheat has a window for planting because of the cold. It requires the cold weather. And if you exceed that, then there's no point for you to plant wheat. But if you had a harvester that could harvest that quickly, and also tractors to plow and make that land ready, then you could do actually wheat. And you could get the double advantage of having both crops within a short period of time.
All right. I'll still get back to, let's take that on. It's one thing to talk about the problem. Another to proffer a solution.
Yes.
For additional, he proffered a solution. For him, government should focus more on producing more food to stabilize the prices, create jobs, and then reduce foreign exchange spending. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing.
All right.
I mean, we have not imported yet, have we?
Okay, because of what you said. Okay. How about the question of storage?
Yeah.
Because for you to have all-round, maybe something like all-round food supply, the question of storage comes in, then credit facilities for the farmers, as well as what you talked about earlier, transportation of those goods, with the elephant in the room again being the fuel prices?
Well, when you come out and point fingers that those are economic reforms that we have to go through. We just don't have a choice but to go through. I mean, it's because it has that initial negative effect on the society, and that's why everybody is crying about. How many times have we gone through removal of subsidy or, but the initial, before it becomes stable, are usually faced with hardships. And Mr. President is aware of that. That's why he keeps appealing to Nigerians. Let us weather this storm. Let's weather. It's soon. It will be Uhuru. Soon we're going to have things that will level out. People will start earning income, that will be affordable for you to lead your normal life. I mean, it has happened. So, but we're doing everything possible. I mean, just recently, because of fertilizer prices, Mr. President gave out 2,150,000 bags of fertilizer. And it impacted a lot greatly on last year's production.
Somebody was actually asking, where are the fertilizers? It hasn't got to the people it's supposed to get to. I think I read that somewhere.
I wouldn't say it hasn't got to. Have you asked farmers where they have, that kind of, sometimes we sit down and speculate. But inputs and government intervention getting to the right person, we're trying to take care of that. We have discussed, we have partnered with NIMSI, the National Identity Management Commission, to issue out the G2P cards, which is a card will be NIN biometrically based with primary data and secondary data, even farmland data. Because what we're missing, sometimes we see farmers without farmlands, but you never see a cultivated farmland without a farmer, right?
Yeah, of course.
So we target the farmland that is cultivated and stick the farmer there and say, okay, next time you get, and it's going to be, support will come through that POS-based biometric NIN card, which has wallets in it, and all we have to do is input whatever support the government wants to give. And it can be done through several different subsidies, whether it's by federal government, by donor agencies, by states, by local governments, NGOs, and so on and so forth. So this is a very wise decision. In the first instance, we're doing 2 million farmers, which it has never been done before.
Approximately 33.1 million Nigerians may fall into food insecurity in 2025, this year. 33.1 million. That's a huge number, caused by rising inflation, persistent economic hardship, and insecurity in food-producing areas, farmers not being able to get to their farms because of insecurity. What is government doing about this?
Very good. You said may face in food insecure. And I like that word, may. And that is what is giving us that window. So whoever came up with that figure knows that something can be done to tackle that. And I believe it has also made us sit up. Yes, you are right. Those figures are alarming. And it's a figure that, by the time you do the calculations, I'll give you an example, 33 million. Even if it's 1 year, 52 weeks, you're talking about every week how many million, or almost about 800,000 people dying, or insecure. Just think about aircraft, 747 for instance, crashing every week, killing all 500 passengers on board. Every week of the month, of the year. Is that not alarming?
That's what I'm saying.
So what we are saying is we have taken steps to see that, God forbid, that doesn't happen. And there's so many of the steps that we're taking. One area that we're looking at is access to credit.
Yeah, I talked about it earlier.
Right. Just today, we had the meeting under the direction of the National Council of Privatization on the recapitalization and restructuring of Bank of Agriculture.
Okay.
And very soon, Bank of Agriculture will come back on its feet and will start impacting on the farmer. And there are so many strategies that we intend to do. It's no longer business as usual.
Minister, just about 4 days ago, flood destroyed rice farms, about 3,000 of them, about 5,000 farmers were affected in Kwara State. The rains have not come yet. What plans does government have for such incidents?
Well, you know, we've always had the Nigeria Agricultural Insurance Corporation. You can't, unless, maybe I shouldn't be talking on behalf of somebody else. I mean, there's an agency that is in charge of irrigation and drainage and sanitation, so water resources. But my ministry, our ministry is mandated and has a recurring effect of whatever is done, especially in terms of what you're talking about, flooding. Yeah. And that flooding, there are several reasons. Climate change, irregular pattern of rainfall. In January, usually no rain, in Kwara. It's usually,
so they were wondering how the flood.
That is climate change. That's what we're talking about. And so that's where we're saying we have to stop thinking of wet season, have to start thinking of all round, and have to start thinking of, like the other one, the program that we're about to launch recently is the greenhouse.
Okay.
And the greenhouse is something that can, mitigate. Climate change, you can't stop it.
You can't, of course.
But you just have to adapt to it and mitigate the effects of climate change, right? So, we have so much in terms of climate change. We're like the worst affected, even in Africa, because we have the desert and then we have the rainforest. Even the rainforest is shrinking. We have erosion in the coastal areas.
I'll ask you 2 questions. We'll have little time now. 35% of arable land in Nigeria only has been cultivated, and Nigeria has one, especially in the north.
Yes.
That's one. Then, in a brief, talk to us about government's policy on GMP, guaranteed minimum price for commodities. Is that price control? Because I know the president said he doesn't like price control.
The president doesn't like price control, but what the president wants is commodity exchange. But what he wants is whatever gains that there are in trading of food commodities must have also an impact on the small-scale farmer, or even on the farmers generally. We are looking at how we can change the mindset of the farmer. This subsistence farming will not take us anywhere. So that's why we're trying to educate our farmers. Stop farming for the stomach only. Farm for the stomach and the pocket as well.
But then they have to have the credit and they have to have
the credit will soon come. I mean, there's a lot of, when you see the subcommittee that worked on today, ranging from the finance, budget and planning, agriculture, bank of central bank, BPE, Morphe. The excitement there is that we need to work on Bank of Agriculture and have access so that the smallholder farmer will have access to credit. That is how you will change the landscape. And then also support large-scale farmers as well. Yeah. Because they contribute, by the time you look at, they may not contribute in terms of the total size, but their yield is much higher. They have economies of scale that can impact greatly on food security.
Oh, Minister, it's a pity we can't take this question because time, we're just talking about it now, so I was going to talk about it, but we don't have the time to talk about involving private sector, which we were just talking about now. So just to thank you for being
thank you very much.
Prime time.
I hope it's
it's when it reflects in affordability of of food. Then
That's
Nigerians can
what
begin
it
to
is.
say, yeah.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
so much for your time.
Thank you.